part of how we should look at critical race theory is that it is a movement that is meant to transform society. How does it transform society? It transforms society in its regard to race, racism, and power. Critical Race Theory, an Introduction. It's a college textbook, and I believe it was originally meant to be a high school textbook. Richard Delgado was part of the original writers of critical race theory, or originators of critical race theory. I know we hear a lot of Kimberly Crenshaw or Mari Matsuda, but there were actually, I believe, 7 people who were there when they originally met to form critical race theory. And so what the critical race theory book says is the critical race theory movement is a collection of activists and scholars engaged in studying and transforming the relationship among race, racism, and power. So when you consider what is critical race theory, part of how we should look at critical race theory is that it is a movement that is meant to transform society. How does it transform society? It transforms society in its regard to race, racism, and power. So it looks at power structures and how those power structures, based on the critical race theory definition of power and power structures, it looks at how those things are impacting race and racism in America. What are the power structures that continue to uphold whiteness or white structures and continue to maintain a level of quote unquote subordination for people of color? It derives from Derek Bell's critical legal theory. Derek Bell is actually—
I've heard that name, yeah. I think I've read something by him because my PhD is in public law. He's a lawyer, right?
Yes.
He's a legal guy? Okay.
Yeah, he actually, are you familiar with Angela Davis and her situation? Yes. He was on her legal defense counsel.
Okay.
So, which is very interesting.
So this would have been decades ago. This should have been in the 70s, maybe? Or 60s? Yes,
Angela Davis had her situation, I believe, in the 70s, beginning of the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. I could be completely wrong, but I do think it's the middle of early 70s. And Derek Bell sat on her legal defense team. What's interesting is that Angela Davis was the protege of Herbert Marcuse. Yes, of Marcuse. And so we see a tie.
Is that a Marxist guy?
He was he's one of the founders of the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory.
Yeah. Okay.
And so when people say that critical race theory is not Marxist, it's not, there's no kind of connection to that. I think it's very interesting to look at the physical, tangible connections in a lot of these things when you get the philosophers and the thinkers of the Frankfurt School and how they came into America and ended up splitting up and just doing their own thing to a degree in academia. And then you see the pairing of Herbert Marcuse and Angela Davis, and then Angela Davis getting into trouble and now having a touch or a tie to Derek Bell.
So this lady, Angela Davis, just for those who may have no idea who you're talking about, can you give us a flavor of what the significance of that name is?
Yes, so Angela Davis is an avowed communist. She actually ran for the vice president of the Communist Party twice, if I'm not mistaken. She is very big in the conversation of defunding the police.
She's still alive?
Yes.
Is she old?
Yes.
She's old. Okay.
She's old. Yeah.
She's old now, but she wasn't back then.
She wasn't back then. And
she's black, right?
She is black.
Okay.
She's black. Actually, I believe that for a time she went to go study in Germany, and she may have studied under Adorno. I could be
why
speaking
does
in a
she need a
different
lawyer?
direction.
What happened?
She needed a lawyer
Was she accused
because
of?
she was part of a situation where there was a hostage situation, like in a courtroom. And I read this so long ago that I want to make sure that I get it
It
correct.
was some kind of violent crime, right?
It was a violent crime where I
and you could
want to say a
easily
judge
find
was
it out.
killed.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I believe a judge was killed. And others
So
were shot.
it
And they
wasn't like
connect.
shoplifting or something. It was like a
No.
serious violent thing. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And they connected her. I believe they tied the guns back to her or something like that. But you can Google Angela Davis and see exactly
there's a
what
rabbit hole
happened.
there if you want.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Her
Gotcha.
ties to Bell, and then Bell's ties to Kimberly Crenshaw, who is probably the foremost person known for critical race theory, is just very interesting. I mean, if nothing else, I would say, that's interesting. When people say, well, it has no ties to Marxism, or it has no ties to
right.
Anything like that. It's very interesting just how closely connected these ties were at some point.
So critical race theory is trying to explain something, right? Every theory tries to offer some kind of explanation for what you're seeing, the data, the phenomenology, or whatever it is you want to say. Data is plural, as everybody who's ever taken statistics knows. So you're trying to explain these data. The data would be like the disparities, right? The disparities of income, disparities of education, could be any number of things, incarceration.
Yes, but it's all looked at through the lens of race.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about taking a critical look into society to understand why there are these disparities. But all of the disparities are assumed to be because of race. Now, I say assumed because I think any other answer aside from race would be immediately turned down. But critical race theory is looking at everything through the lens of race in order to transform the relationship that people have with race and power. So how do we shift the conversation in race and power within our society?